on. Okay, I think it's running. Well, I'm Peter Rundel, musical director of the Remix Ensemble, and I'm very happy to welcome composer Pedro Lima. We have this Zoom meeting and this interview as part of our Zooming In, a closer look on composing series. And welcome, Pedro.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, starting with some questions, as this Zooming In series is mainly dedicated at the moment to Portuguese composers, because we think it's really worth to present them also to a kind of international public. I would like to start and asking you, what does it mean for you to be a Portuguese composer?
I mean, it's a difficult one. I think to be a Portuguese composer, it's quite a strange feeling, actually. I think right now borders are being dissolved everywhere, and because of internet, and I mean, since I was born, I was able to hear everything I wanted. Spotify, YouTube, and I think that's actually really important. And also, I think there's this sort of identity crisis with Portuguese music. Of course, we have great composers through the centuries, and particularly this century and the last one. Some composers provided us with great music, yes. And that's really important. But I wouldn't say it's Portuguese music. I think I said it before, and I think it's music that was wrote by Portuguese composer, but I wouldn't say it's Portuguese music, because for me, I lived in London in the last 4 years, and I was able to experience British music, French music, German music, Australian music, and all of that has a huge influence in everything I write and compose. So it's, I don't know, it's especially me as a young composer, and being yes. young, it's even more difficult to define my music as a Portuguese music. But I think to be a Portuguese composer is to have the will to travel and to discover things outside, because we really need to do that. Our history is not enough. I don't know, probably it's the same for every composers around the world, but our music, it's not the same it's not enough to provide us with everything we need to compose, I think.
I see. Yes. It's interesting what you say. Of course, it's though interesting the fact that especially the contemporary music scene, even if of course we have the possibilities to communicate, and composers know each other, and they check each other, and they listen to each other. So in a at least in a European, if not bigger frame,
yeah.
Still, if you look to the programming of concerts in the different countries, it's still focused on a quite limited a number. I mean, saying what I want to say is that France has his own culture in contemporary music and his own composers. There are composers in France which are not well known in Germany, and the same for British. So that the scenes are still, despite the fact that these communication possibilities are there, the kind of scenes are still quite, I think so, quite isolated or
I agree,
or one-dimensional. So that's also why we have this kind of series, and Portugal being a bit at the edge of Europe is not completely in the focus, for instance, of Central Europe. Huh? So
yes,
yeah,
no, I agree, and I think, I mean, it's quite paradoxical, because we have a big number of Portuguese composers right now composing like really good music, and of course we have a few places, and we don't have the cultural dimensions like France or Germany or England. but I think it's quite amazing that still we are doing music and we are trying to create, and that's really good for institutions like Casa da Música to support these young composers. I think that's great.
Yes. Okay. A little bit to your biography.
Mm-hmm.
It's always an interesting question. How did you become a composer? I mean, yeah, was it a kind of gradual, very natural development out of playing, or out of making music, out of improvising, or was there a moment in your life which was like a kind of
Yeah.
give you such a strong impulse that at one moment it was clear, this is what I want to do?
I feel like it was completely natural. I actually I feel I'm not responsible for being a composer, to be honest. Um, I went to the music conservatory when I was 6 years old. So I wasn't able to think about being a composer. I was just experiencing and learning music.
Yes.
And I had the chance to play the clarinet for 12 years, to play the piano, percussion, and to sing also. But I always felt that I would rather be improvising or creating harmony or melodic lines more than actually playing the actual pieces I had to play.
Okay, so it was from the beginning. It was a kind of
Yes.
you were already inventing music. Is it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And it wasn't like good music or something, but it was like this will to
Process
create.
of inventing. Yeah.
Yes, and actually, I about around like 15 years old, I thought about quitting music and go study other things. But I was very lucky to have some beautiful teachers around me and my family also, and they guide me through composing, like showing me new music, and I think that's really important for a young musician when. For the first time, he listens to new music. I remember the first time I listened to John Adams or Steve Reich, and that was quite amazing because I wasn't aware of that scene. I only knew music until I don't know Shostakovich or something like that, and suddenly there's like this fresh new music with new harmony, and that was quite important. And then it was very gradual to start composing for a small group of friends. For myself, I also played some pieces as a clarinetist.
Yes.
And then, I went to Lisbon, and I guess when I went to Lisbon to study with João Madureira and with Luis Tinoco, that was really the moment where I understood that probably I was going to be a composer, full-time job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, you being so young and from a completely other generation, um, uh, how big was the influence of in your history, in your career, the influence of popular music, or were you already from the beginning in this kind of classical music?
No, no. Actually, that's a very important point because I always had some pop bands through
Okay.
my life. So that was also a moment where I was creating. I was creating as part of a group, but I was creating, and I played the drums for quite a long time. And that really shaped my way of perceiving music, and to I think that's really important for any young composer nowadays to have like I said before, borders are being dissolved, and I think that's not only a geographical thing, that's also a thing inside our minds, and to be able to experience all kind of music, like techno music or Mozart all at once, that really shaped my way of perceiving, and there are loads of composers doing that nowadays actually.
Yes.
So yeah, that was really important.
Okay. Yes, I was guessing that. I mean, just studying your music and listening to your music, that this is indeed a kind of influence.
Yeah.
I think it's time that we speak about your piece, because this series is also about particular pieces. In this case, it's a piece you wrote for the Remix Ensemble last year when you were young Portuguese composer in residence of the Casa da Música. And it was our first collaboration, and the piece is called Talking About My Generation.
Yes.
When was it clear for you that you would choose? No, let me tell it. Let me do it in give the question another way. How? When did you decide that it has to be this piece, this text, this subject for you? So I guess you had a commission. You knew you would write for the remix ensemble.
I knew, yeah.
To write this specific piece, was it a kind of process, or again, was it a moment, or was it a plan you had even before you got the commission?
No, no, it wasn't before. So when we as a young composer in residence at Casa da Música, we have always 3 commissions. One for a small chamber ensemble, one for a mixed ensemble, and then for the symphony orchestra. And I knew I wanted to do something different for the remix for many reasons. I think first of all, there's this pressure of writing to the remix ensemble, because it's such a great group, especially absolutely related with contemporary music, and I'm a composer, so that's sort of a responsibility. But also, I think my way to avoid that question and to feel free to do what I wanted was to do something really meaningful for me. And so I started thinking about things I live, and especially the last 3-4 years in London, everything I've experienced there. And I think that I thought the remix was the greatest group to explore contemporary views of the world, especially my view of the world. So it was really a process, and also because we have the 3 commissions really close together. So we have to be quick composing music. And I thought immediately about the text, about having a commission inside of the commission. So I spoke with Gareth Matthew, a writer from the UK. Yes. We have wrote an opera before together in London, so we have a great relationship and we are great friends. And he's a really talented writer, so it was quite natural to get there. I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, I have to say that when I got the score, I remember very well, and when I was reading the title, I was very surprised, and in a way very happy that that this was a piece where a composer dares to talk about now. Yeah. And his situation now, which is quite unusual, because very often, as you know, in contemporary music, it's very often the composers are kind of hiding behind abstract titles or aesthetic processes, and the title already, they reflect this kind of, I don't want to say that they are impersonal or they are hiding their identity, but yeah, I know. It's very rare that they give a very clearly and open a statement about their situation. And I was very curious reading this title, of course, also because I'm of the generation which you know, talking about my generation is a bit my generation. It was this famous song of the who became a kind of hymn of our generation. And then reading actually the text of Gareth, which is the basis of your piece, it became clear for me that it's a kind of redefinition of a position of the younger generation, which interests me because my kids are in your age. And in a way, being part of this boomer generation, I'm very aware that we as a generation we had this kind of ideals and we had the anger, and there was a protest, but it led to a situation where the world is, we didn't really succeed to make the world better. And now it's your generation who has to deal with the results, and the world is even more, I say, fucked up than before. Yes.
You know, I totally agree, and I think for a composer right now, it's so much easier to see things, see creative things around himself. I mean, I don't have to. I don't have to go to the end of my thoughts to find some philosophical meaning to write something about. I think being on the tube in London is itself a really deep experience of I don't know what exactly, but the piece is really about that. It's being able to looking around, and we are living hard times as a generation, and we are experiencing very bad and good things at the same time. It's very confusing to have an opinion about life in general. So I think that's really provocative to create. I think it's really easy to look around us and see things that we can explore creatively. And that was really the basis of this piece, I think.
I think maybe it would be really important, because the text of Gareth Matty is so impressive. I think we have to read it for our listener at least once. You want to do that? You agree?
Yeah.
I
agree. I think that's really cool, actually.
Yeah.
I have the text here, so I can start.
Yes.
And probably it's also a good moment to say that a big thank you to Rose Stachniewska. She recorded the text for me then.
Okay.
And she did an awesome job. It was like an hour recording of many solutions, even before I started composing the piece.
Yes.
So yeah. So it goes, talking about my generation. Once echo boomers boom with echoes of disappearing dust, tidal time gone past. Bye-bye. Slow, done for, no more. Now, riddles in brackets, no answers, only references, explosions inside, outside, side by side together. There's a fire, where, who cares? Now, it's a free-for-all. Disaffection, free-for-all for a limited time only. Disenchantment, free-for-all for a limited time only. Dispossession, free-for-all for a limited time only. Disenfranchisement, free for all for a limited time only. There's only a limited time left. Now, settling stardust becomes sentient over centuries. See how sad it is. Sitting, sighing, selling, and purchasing disasters on sale. Surely the sudden end is soon. Now, steering wheel lost, long gone. Go fast into that vast, no matter who lose. Scream, go fast, go fast, go fast. Now, until everyone, everything exhausted, simply exhausted. But then, no pause, just go and go fast. That's it.
Yes, it's impressive for many reasons. It's not a completely optimistic text, no?
It's hard to be optimistic nowadays, I think.
It's true. No, it's quite pessimistic. I mean, in a way, what stays in my mind is this kind of, and what also shows the music of your composition is this kind of movement. It's moving, it's going, it's moving, and you don't know, you might not know exactly where. So the movement itself is the subject in a way.
Yeah, I agree.
But there's also a lot of, I mean, in the music itself, it's also a kind of. Would you agree if I would characterize it as a kind of protest or anger? Because for me, not all the time, of course not, but it's also a kind of, yes, I feel a kind of desperation also.
Yeah, probably I agree. I didn't do it thinking about like protesting. It's more like relating what I see. And of course, that comes as a protest because I don't agree with many things that I'm saying right now, as many of us probably. But I think it's more like watching the facts and being a bit dramatic about them. Yes, but of course I understand it comes across like a protest because it's really, especially with the music being so violent sometimes and so
Exactly.
loud.
Yeah.
I think it's, especially thinking about, for example, the megaphones at the end with
Yes.
the both players standing up, and I mean that's really what it is. But yes, I agree. Yeah.
If I would have to characterize it musically, I mean, in terms of musicology,
Yeah.
I would say I have different possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to know your opinion with what you could agree.
Mm-hmm.
Is a kind of first of all, you set the text for a speaker, which is
Yeah.
electronically manipulated. It's like a solo
Yeah.
part, actually. So it could
Yeah. Yeah.
be, it's a kind of dramatic scene for for voice or for voices and ensemble. This is one
Yeah.
possibility. It could
Mm-hmm.
be also seen as a kind of big rondo because it has a kind of refrain which
Mm-hmm.
certain, according to the poetry, it's always with the now, with the
Mm-hmm.
going with this impulse. It has a kind of theme. It could
Mm-hmm.
also be seen as a song, having this kind of refrain
Yeah.
structure. It's
Yeah.
all of that.
I think it's all of them at the same time. I totally agree. I would say when I first, of course, I worked very close with Gareth when he was conceiving the text. So I was aware of everything. It wasn't like a surprise for me. I was conscious of the form, and the form is really important. And I totally agree with the Rondo references because there is this now through the text. I mean, there's a small section and then it always goes back to now, now, now. And I think that reflects itself as a musical refrain, as you said very well. I think that's the moment, and only at the last stage of the piece, that gesture becomes almost like a living creature, and I consciously explore the gesture through time and explore the rhythm, the harmonic part of it.
Yes.
But I agree. But also, it's really that's the thing for for any piece with voices. I think for the audience, it's always very easy to relate with voice because everyone has one, and so it comes across, especially at the concert we did with the subtitles and everything. It was really a soloistic part. It was really a soloistic part, and it gives the. That's why I really love to work with text and with words because it suggests a meaning for everything we are listening. And with such a powerful list of words, like the ones we can find in this poem, it's really strong. So I think it's really, the character becomes more and more alive through the piece.
Yes.
But I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I just
It's
want to say
everything at the same time.
for our listeners, I mean, if you are listening to the piece and looking for this kind of refrain, I think you will, after the first introduction, it is this kind of theme is proposed. It's a kind of, I would call it a kind of rocket theme. It's a very rhythmical, high energetic movement which goes from the lower register to the upper register, and it leads to a kind of a kind of screaming situation, and then it breaks down and or it evolves in something else. And
Yeah,
this theme comes at important points of the text again and again. And as you said in the last section, which is a kind of passacaglia. It's a kind of variations about a bass loop, which is repeated. but within this Passacaglia, this theme is kind of loads itself more and more, so it becomes richer and richer and more developed. It's a kind of development section, a big development section, which leads to the climax of the piece. And as like in a rondo, you have contrasting sections according to the text, which are sometimes a bit more lyrical, sometimes sad, sometimes exhausted, which make the contrast to this theme. And after this big climax at the end, you have a kind of coda, which is about the text, everything exhausted. So it's the music comes to a kind of still stand.
There are two things.
Again,
Yes, it goes again, right at the end. I think there are two things that are really important to understand the process of the piece. The first one is because I consider the most important thing of the text, I think it's the alliteration. And I tried to discover what it means, alliteration in music. And I have no answer. I think it's really, because it's not the same thing as repetition. It's not the same thing. I think that's other thing. And repetition is something quite usual within the music world.
Yes.
And so there are sections as the settling stardust becomes sentient over centuries. And that's really interesting. And it's really easy to create the S world within the wind instruments or the percussions just doing things at the surface. And my goal was to create also some kind of recreation of the letters within the ensemble, but also this thing called the shepherd tone, which is a sound going always upwards. And so there are many samples through the piece which contain this shepherd tone effect, something going up for forever. It's an illusion. It's an illusion.
Yes.
You start, so it's like a frequency is going up, and then another one starting below, and you have this, and the piece, it's really like that until the last moment where it becomes the opposite, going always downwards.
There's also one sound, if I recall it right. It's a kind of siren. I mean, the siren is used in the ensemble, but it's also in the
recreated in the sample. In
the electronic treatment. I guess it has to it relates in a way to this phenomenon you are describing.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's in a way, it's for me also this kind of character of to be alert and alarmed at the same time, and musically to have something which is going from low to up, and then again and again down. It's a bit the gesture of the overall piece. For me, it's a kind of symbol for the whole piece.
I agree, and also a siren is very important. I really love the sound of siren. I don't know why, but I really like it, and I love the dramatic side of it, because it doesn't mean never a good thing.
Yes.
And I guess that's always that's also why I thought about a siren, because it gives like a certain state, like an alarm, like something is going to happen, and also it recreates this effect of always going up, the thing that I was speaking about. So it's it's part of the structure and the sound environment of the piece.
About the alliteration, because it interests me. Of course, in the S section, it is very clear and very you can hear it immediately. It's a kind of variation about the consonant S. Would you agree that dealing with this kind of alliterations in a compositional manner, the challenge is to find certain colors for it, right? It has to do with the color of our language.
I agree. Totally.
And that's what I feel when I'm actually when I listening to the music. That there's these different sections that you tried to create a specific color for these alliterations.
Yes,
One.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And because I think the text is so specific that it provokes me to do different things accordingly to the beat I am exploring. So I think that the piece being, it's very, it's in a way, the way of using this refrain, it's something structural.
Yes.
And it's something that also gives the coherence, like it keeps the piece intact, because we have that point to always come back.
As a point of reference.
Yes, it's a point of reference, absolutely, because the everything in between, it's always very different. From beat to beat, it's always very, very different. But because I think the text provokes me in that way, and there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. So the refrain becomes even more important as a solid point that connects the whole piece.
Also for the listener, especially when you hear it the first time, of course.
Yeah.
The psychological fact of recognizing things again and following the composer, what he's doing the next time with it, is, I think it's still a very important thing in composition. I was thinking something else, because I realized that it's a kind of rondo, and the rondo is a very interesting form for me. If you look back in the history, in the beginning it was a dance. Meaning that it was using this repetitive form to bring a theme again and again. It was for the same reasons. If we want to dance, we want to rely on something which we know, so that we can
already know, of course.
But it was basically something very joyful in the beginning, and more in the history of music, the rondo. If you think, especially with Schubert, for me, there comes another element, a kind of existential element in the form of rondo, meaning that it's not anymore something playful and joyful. It means also a kind of, it can mean something which is coming again and again because there is no way out, which is something. Which is in a way very pessimistic, or hopelessness, or it's a kind of dead end. So it's a kind of, it's an interesting form because it became something else, or in some movements of Mahler, for instance.
Yeah.
In this context, I was again thinking, when I studied your score, that it's interesting that you choose this form. Also, of course, it has to do with the poem, but to express your world, or our world, the world we are living in, as something where you have an eternal comeback of like being in a wheel. There's no way of getting out. So there's
no way out. Yeah.
Dimension. I mean, there's structural dimension, but there's also this dimension that we are in a situation where it's very hard to find alternatives, or good alternatives, or solutions for the problems.
Yes. I also like the fact that when I started exploring the refrain itself, in the last moment at the Passacaglia, and this was very organic. So it wasn't like the moment where the composer knows exactly what he is going to do. I started exploring the material, and I ended up creating a Passacaglia with a very weird, I would say, groove, because you are not expecting to have like the congas and the maracas doing that sort of vibe around the material. And eventually the whole piece goes to the climatic moment, to chaos.
Yes.
And I think that's also something interesting, as the first moment where I started to focus on the material, chaos came across, and that was the only direction, and I felt it as a nice thing for the piece, but also very realistic in the way we are living in.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about many themes at the same time, not only political, but environment and other things. Yeah. And that was very interesting also. Yeah.
Okay. I think we talked enough, maybe. I hope that we succeeded to make our listeners really curious. I just can tell that we will, of course, together with the interview, as always, we will also publish the recording of Pedro Lima's piece, talking about my generation, and I hope, yes, that we succeeded to make you curious to listen to it and even enjoy it. Thank you very much, Pedro. It was great.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really good to talk about these things. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.